No one can hold that ants are beautiful creatures, but we may acknowledge their social virtues and praise them as types for men to imitate. This has been done by Solomon to Bismarck. They appeal to our aesthetic sense as little as the earwigs or cockroaches. Neither have they any characteristics that engage men's goodwill for other creatures. We are interested in all things that may be useful to us in some way, especially those that we can eat. We like horses because we can ride on them, and bees because they give us honey. We keep birds in cages because we like their singing, and we keep cats to play with. Besides its usefulness, the beauty or comic character of an animal holds mankind's interest. The schoolboy chases butterflies over the meadow or in the woods. He gathers caterpillars only because the beautiful butterfly emerges from them. He catches the slender lizard and the beautifully tinted salamander. He runs after the droll white dancing mice, and the ugliest ape provokes his laughter. He collects beetles because he is attracted by their peculiarities. Ants serve no great or obvious useful purpose for man. They are not beautiful. Certainly, they are not funny. For these reasons, man has taken little notice of ants, a condition that satisfies the ants greatly, because the interest which man takes in those animals that are useful to him, which can fulfill his aesthetic sense, or amuse him, betides little that is pleasant for these animals. We know more than 5,000 species of ants, scattered all over the earth. All kinds live in colonies, forming states, nations, communities, whatever it pleases men to call them. Some species have two castes, male and female. Usually, however, there are three, males on the one side, queens and workers on the other. The queen is always prolific. The workers are usually barren. The males and females are almost always similar in form, but many types of workers are found. Females and males have wings, but some species have wingless females and others wingless males. The workers are always wingless. Like the bee people, the ant people are feminists, but to a greater degree. The males, living only a short time, die after marriage. The number of prolific queens is not limited to one, as among the bees, but is far less than that of the workers. There may be 50 queens in a colony of hundreds of thousands of workers. Ants are the highest among invertebrate animals, while man is among vertebrates. The similarity between them is startling. Not only do we find many single points of similarity, but even in their historical evolution, ants and man exhibit many resemblances. In anthropology, we speak of the age of hunting, age of the shepherds, age of agriculture, and today we can still find, side by side with trading and industrial man, only shepherds, hunters, or agriculturists. The same three ages are found in the evolution of the ants. They pass from the most ancient hunters to the shepherds and then to agriculturists. And as among men, all these appear at the same time now. Just like man, ants have a few super dangerous enemies, if we accept the parasites. Incidentally, some animals do feed on ants, such as the ant bear, woodpecker, lizard, frog, and a few spiders and wasps. But the few that fall prey to these FOs are negligible in number. They have one dangerous enemy, and this is strikingly similar to man, as is the case with the races and nations of man. So the ants have been their own most savage enemies. Are ants more dangerous or more serviceable to man? It is difficult to answer the question broadly. Some species undoubtedly are harmful and should be fought against, while others are so useful to us that they should be protected. Germany is the only country that has passed a law to protect these species, and in most of its states, it is forbidden by law to gather the so-called ant eggs, because of the service of the ants in the forests. All kinds of house ants are harmful and annoying, especially pharaoh ants. Other species make themselves very much of a nuisance in our gardens. The leaf-cutting ants of the tropics strip entire trees and bushes, including fruit trees, while the ants that attack cattle still do greater damage. Ants also attach their domestic animals like leaf lice, root lice, and caterpillars to young roots and leaves, and thereby often kill the young plants. The harvest ants eat up much valuable grain. The harm done by ants in building their nests is very slight. Carpenter ants bore through trees, letting in the woodpeckers, but although these peck into the trees, they do not hurt them irretrievably. The cork tree alone really suffers from these attacks. Some ants can bite and sting with considerable force. The prize in this respect I award to the fire ants of Dixieland. Yet it must be said that only those who disturb their nests suffer from these stings and bites. Most of all the investigators of ant life, and of course, the ant egg hunter. 15 years ago, Holzer, the old peasant shoemaker, lived in a Schneeberg village near Puckberg in the district of Rax. For a long time, he furnished the aquarium at Schneebrunn with ant eggs. The ants at the foot of Schneeberg enjoyed life very little so long as he was alive, for old Holzer gathered their broods and shipped them to Vienna for the fish. One day, however, when he had just thrown his sack over a great heap, he had a stroke of paralysis and fell with his face amid the swarming ants. When he was found 2 days later, his face was very eaten away. No one could have recognized old Holzer in him. The people in that village of the Schneeberg say that he did not die as he fell into the ant swarm, but that he still lived, paralyzed, and that the ants ate away Father Holzer's eyes. That was the ants' revenge, say they. No one ever again gathered ant eggs on the outskirts of Schneeberg. But ants may benefit mankind, as was first recognized by the Prussian forest keepers. They stir up the soil, plowing and harrowing better than men can. They extirpate an enormous number of insects daily, some useful ones, but far more harmful kinds. It has been estimated that a large colony of ants will take as many as 100,000 other insects to their nest in a single day. Wandering ants in the tropics sometimes run into human habitation, and even though the inhabitants may have to cleanse their homes of them for hours or days, they are considered welcome guests. Be that house filled with lice, fleas, or cockroaches, when the ants leave, no trace of any other insect remains. They do not forget the rats and mice, and no rat catcher ever did the work so thoroughly as they. In southern China, the ants have been recognized as hunters, especially in orange orchards, which are subject to a real plague of worms. Entire nests of ants are brought in and are hung on the limbs and bags, or fastened to the branches of the orange trees. Bamboo rods are placed so that the ants pass from one tree to the other, and capture their prey with ease. Similarly, the care of mango trees is given over to ants in Java to protect them from a devouring beetle, and in Upper Italy, they help to protect the fruit trees from caterpillars. In the United States, ants are allowed to fight the destructive boll weevil on the cotton plants. In Germany too, we have known, for centuries, that ants could be utilized, although we have not availed ourselves of this knowledge very widely. Foresters hang a sack with an ant nest on the branch of a tree attacked by a plague of caterpillars, and draw a band of tar around the trunk so that ants cannot leave the tree. Then, the ants build a new nest in the bag and feed on the caterpillars in the tree. Our wood ants gather plant seeds normally, but they do not eat the seeds all by themselves. They eat only the fleshy covering and throw away the seed. In this way, they scatter the seeds of the plants they like, and we find violets and cypress spurge growing along their paths. That ants can strip an animal of flesh down to the bones is well known to every schoolboy who has put a dead mouse or lizard near an ant nest. In Mexico, they also use ant nests for delousing. The garments, running over with lice, are placed on the nest and are recovered a few days later and thoroughly cleansed. The lice and fleas are the payment given to the good ants for their industry. Ants are not unknown in medicine either. Formerly formic acid, made from crushed ants, had a prominent place in the drugstore. That ants may be used to sew up wounds is not so well known. Indian physicians utilize the strong soldiers of the leaf-cutting ants for this purpose. They press the wound together and let the ants bite through. After they have taken hold, the heads are severed from their bodies. The large heads of the ants thus close the wound effectively. Ant heads instead of catgut. The medicine men of the Brazilian Indians are not so stupid after all. At least, the use of ants in European medicine a couple of hundred years ago was far less promising. In the famous Book of Simples of the wise Adam Lanesser, which was used up to the 19th century, we find this remarkable recipe. Put a pot in an ant nest, covered with green leaves, so that the ants will take their eggs into it. When you think you have enough, take away the pot. Empty the ants and eggs into a bag, and beat it like grain until all are dead. Distill all in an alembic. 3 drops of this water to be dropped into the eyes. Before you go to bed will remove all film and spots. Beneficial as this extract of the ants themselves is for the eyes. Their eggs are just as good for the ears. According to the learned Dr. Launesser, the best way to gather ant eggs is to place a wooden bowl or cup in an ant nest, covered with foliage, and the ants will carry their eggs there. Draw away the leaves, and the ants run away, but the eggs are left in the bowl. In case the ants are slow to depart, rap sharply on the sides of the bowl, and they will run at once. Distill these eggs through an alembic in a balneomary. 3 or 4 drops of this water put into the ears will restore the hearing and stop roaring in the ears. If you don't believe it, try it. Possibly, the ants will be so accommodating as to behave as Dr. Launesser says. In our day, mankind is too well informed to believe that diseased eyes and ears can be cured with the extract of ants. But in many countries, the superstition still prevails that they are specific for gout. All that is necessary is to put the naked foot into an ant nest and allow the ants to sting for 15 minutes. It is said that the most stubborn case must yield. This treatment method is not very pleasant, but if it does not help, at least it cannot harm. I know an old peasant who has tried this treatment and asserts that it cures. Mankind also utilizes ants as food. Not only are the pups so-called ant eggs used as food for birds and fish, but some men eat the ants themselves. Every Indian and Australian Negro considers the honey-swollen bodies of the honey ant a tidbit. This is no textbook. For this reason, I shall discuss the outer and inner structure of ants as briefly as possible, as well as their evolution, variety, and other things. I shall only touch upon the essentials that are needed to understand the life of the ants. If there is any creature entitled to the name insect, it is the ant. Insect, the cut-in animal. The animal that has a body in 3 parts: head, breast, posterior body, sharply separated from one another. The body of the ant is enclosed in a sheath of chitin, which has some hairs on certain parts of the body for feeling. The shape of the head varies more than among any other creatures. It may be round, elliptical, triangular, square, pear-shaped, heart-shaped, or bottle-shaped. The upper jaws vary quite as much, depending on the work they are to do. They are used as weapons for fighting, reducing the size of the food, carrying booty or their young, digging up the ground, building, and for many other uses. To the ant, they are what the trunk is to the elephant: nose, arm, hand. They are also the tongue for taking up fluid foods, and the wash sponge for this cleanest of all animals. They and the lower jaw are the seat of the sense of taste. On each side of the head is an eye, which has little power of vision in some species. The males have the best eyes. The females have eyes that are not so good. The workers have the poorest eyes, and in some species, they are blind, as there is no optic nerve. Still, others have no optic nerve. Still, others have no eyes whatsoever, besides these faceted eyes on the side of the head. The males and females, and very seldom the workers, have an eye in the forehead, and the purpose is not yet well understood. Possibly, it serves for seeing in the dark. The feelers are the organs of smell and taste, both of which are well developed in ants. The feelers also serve as taps for communication. They speak with their feelers as we do with our tongues. It is almost certain that ants hear, but we do not yet know the organ of hearing. We shall discuss their senses more fully later. The difference in the brain in the 3 castes is notable. It's only slightly developed in males, much better in females, and best of all in the workers. These differences, however, are not as great as has been held. There are some species in which the females have the most highly developed brains, in which they are rudimentary in males and workers. The wings are attached to the breast section in males and females, as well as the 6 legs. The workers, whether male or female, are wingless. On the forelegs are the peculiar cleaning brushes, formed of 2 opposed combs. One of these combs lies on the long side of the leg, the other on special spurs. The ants draw their feelers between these combs to cleanse them of all dirt. The feet also have gripping claws to enable them to climb, as well as flaps by which the ants can climb smooth walls. The posterior differs greatly in the various species, as much as the head. It may be round, elliptical, long, or heart-shaped. It is connected to the breast section by a thin rod. In some species, a sounding organ is here, which the insect can produce tones. As to the stomach, we must note the difference between the crop stomach, which ants feed their young or companions, and the private stomach. They are separated from one another by the pump stomach. The ovaries of the queen deserve special mention. When fructified by the male, the germ is kept for as long as 12 years or more. And in this way, the queen lays fertile eggs all her life. The larger these ovaries are in some species, the more they take up from the male, the more they can preserve, and the more numerous the progeny that the queen can bring into being. In workers, the sexual parts are more or less arrested in development. Complete absence or arrested development marks them off from the queens. The poison gland is connected directly with the sting, which is located at the extreme end of the body. It is lacking in the males and is missing in queens and workers of some species. The ants that have a sting inject the poison into the wound made by the sting, while those without a sting inject the poison into the wounds that are made by their mandibles. Some species can squirt their poison several yards, and the effect of this poison is so deadly that even unwounded insects are made unconscious or killed. Little is as yet known about the character of this poison. Besides these common poison glands, some species have special poison glands for protective purposes. They emit a liquid that overcomes inimical insects with its acid or rancid odor. Man's invention of fighting his enemies with poison gases has been known to the ants and other insects for thousands of years. 3 stable forms are known in the ant world: the winged male, the queen, a winged female, and the mass of ants, arrested female workers. This classification does not hold universally, however. There are species in which there are only 2 kinds, naturally male and female, living the parasitical life without work. We also find wingless males or wingless females, and instead of one type of worker, we have many kinds. As a rule, the variations within any single species are confined to the females. The males, living only for the purpose of fructifying, and that for a short time, in the ant state, usually are of a single type. But among the females, no other animals show so great of a variety as the ants. The typical male is the handsomest of the ants. His feelers, the eyes and the forehead, and eyes too, are the best developed. But his upper jaws are not usable either as weapons or as tools. His head is smaller than the female's, and the brain is developed very slightly. The type of the male is not constant. In the wandering ants, he is a husky fellow with powerful mandibles. In the workerless ants, the male has lost his wings and looks somewhat like a degenerate female. Among other species, the wingless male resembles the workers. In the speckled stinging ants, we find both winged and wingless males. The typical female, the queen, is the largest in form and is symmetrical in every part. An exception to this rule exists in the wandering ants, among which the queen is astonishingly large but has no wings or eyes. In other species, among the Amazons, besides the typical females are others that resemble the workers. The typical worker is wingless. It has no eyes on the forehead, and the eyes at the side of the head are not so well developed. The hind body is small, and the sexual parts are stunted. On the other hand, the feelers, upper jaw, and brain especially are well developed. Yet with these, we find other types in great variety. In some species, we often see workers of different size, some very small and others 8 times as large. Between these are many grades, exhibiting many variations in bodily structure. The workers existed in all sizes as usual in Andom. In some species, these variations in the worker size have ceased, and only the size that seems best adapted for the activity of this species has survived. In such cases, we speak of a uniformity of workers. When 2 sizes have persisted, we speak of them as biphore, and the larger ones we term soldiers. The soldier has a bigger head with larger and stronger mandibles. Frequently, the activity of the soldiers is exclusively that of fighting, but sometimes they perform more peaceful tasks, such as cutting up any booty that is brought in, guarding the door, nursing the sick, bearing burdens, or acting as the living door. Science is ever adding to the number of variations in the form of the workers. In some cases, it is difficult to tell whether we have to deal with a new type. When scientists insist that pathologically misshapen ants are a special type, and say that the giant or tiny individuals, made so by disease or parasites, are a special type, we must enter a strong disclaimer. Would we say that human dwarfs, Giants, hermaphrodites, hunchbacks, those with gigantic goiters, or suffering from elephantiasis or special types? Certainly not. Then why should we do this with ants? How tremendous the difference in size. Maybe within a single species is proved in the case of the African thieving ant, Carabara. In the cubic content of a single female of this species, 8,000 workers could find room. As to the reason for these variations, all the wise men have broken their heads, and I was foolish enough to do the same thing. Every expert puts whatever other experts have said, or written under the magnifying glass, examining them critically. Then he takes a thought here and there, adds a little of his own, contradicts the theories formerly set up and lays down his own. Finally, if he is honest, he admits that all is speculation, that no one has the least idea of it all, and that it is nothing but guesswork. But I think it is very fortunate that we do not know this, or many other things. How monotonous it would be if we knew everything. That is the greatest stimulus for all science, always raising new problems, always unveiling new secrets.